Hi guys, most of you know me, but if you don't, my name is Miss Carmichael and I'll be helping you guys out with some of your notes this year. I think last time you guys should have looked over the notes for, let me think, it was, your macromolecules and different elements that are important to life, so make sure that you guys have those notes. If not, I'll put them up on my website. If you don't know that, you could probably ask some of your classmates, they should know. Today we're actually going to get introduced to cells because cells are what you guys are going to be talking about for the next couple months. Alright, so we can skip the title slide. Alright, your I can statements. These are the things that you should be able to do at the end of class. Everything on here should be on the PowerPoint, so we will re-go over these when we're finished, but make sure that as you're going through the PowerPoint, you can do these 4 things. Okay, the first one, you should be able to describe the 3 parts of the cell theory. You should be able to identify 5 scientists and their contributions to the cell theory. You should be able to analyze a cell to explain whether it's a prokaryote or a eukaryote. And you should be able to describe 5 things that all cells have in common. Alright, and here's today's agenda. You guys are going to fill in your guided notes along with this video. They should have been printed and handed out to you. You just want to fill in those blanks that are on the notes. And as you're filling in your notes, I want you guys to write down any questions you might have about the material. I'll try and come up to the school to get those and see if I can clear things up if you guys need me to. After you've finished all that, you should complete your cell theory worksheet to make sure that you understand your notes, and you're going to turn this in to the teacher. And then you're going to complete the cell organelle coloring page, which you're going to keep in your notebook. And your homework for today is going to be complete anything that you didn't get a chance to finish in class. Alright, so right now I want you guys to take out a sheet of paper. I want you to put your name, date, and block on the paper so that it can get back to the right person. And I want you to use that piece of paper to write down any questions you have during the presentation. Anything that you would normally raise your hand and ask me, since I'm obviously not there, write it down, and again, I'll try and come get that and answer any questions for you guys. And also, of course, make sure you have your guided notes out and ready to fill those in. Oh, and another thing I wanted to add was that you guys will probably have to pause the video, so just make sure whether the teacher is up here or whether there's a student up here, you have somebody that can pause the video to make sure that everybody gets the notes. Okay guys, so let's talk about the cell theory. The cell theory has 3 parts. Okay, the first one says that all living things are made of cells. I think that one's, pretty straightforward. Every living thing is made of cells. Even single-celled organisms, you have bacteria, things like that. Multicellular organisms like us, which means we're made of lots and lots of different cells. All of those are considered living, but if it's living, it has to be made up of cells. Alright, the second part says that the cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. Basically, all that means is we don't consider it life unless it is at least one cell. Cells are the basic building block of life. Just like the atom is building block of matter, everything is made of atoms, but we don't consider an atom life. When it's a cell, that's when we consider it to be life. And life is built using cells. Okay, and the last part of the cell theory says that all cells come from pre-existing cells. You guys will learn how more when we talk about mitosis and meiosis. But basically what happens is, the way cells are formed is that you just have a cell that divides and then you have 2 cells. But, a cell has to have a parent cell. It always has to come from a pre-existing cell. Haha! Look who woke up in the middle of the notes. Say hi, Hank. Can you say hi? Hi. Wave hi. No. He just got a hold of my hair. Okay, let's continue. Next we're going to talk about scientists that are important to the cell theory. Hank, can you say bye-bye? Bye-bye. No, he's not up for entertaining. Alright, so the first scientist is Robert Hooke, and he built a microscope which allowed him to look at cork. And when he looked at the cork, he saw openings that looked like honeycombs. He compared these to cells that monks lived in at the time, and so he called them cells, and that's where we get the term cells from. The second scientist, forgive me if I say this wrong, Matthias Schleiden, and he used a microscope to look at plant tissue. And what he concluded is that all plants are made of cells. As you guys can see in this picture right here, you can see the different plant cells. Then Theodor Schwann used a microscope to study animal cells, and he concluded that all animals are made of cells. Rudolf Virchow proposed that all cells come from pre-existing cells, and I think he did this because as he looked at at cells through a microscope, he could see when they were dividing. The final scientist is Anton van Leeuwenhoek, and he was the first to observe single-celled organisms, which are those organisms that are just made of one cell, like your bacteria, your protists, things like that. And he originally referred to those as, I think that's animalcules. And those are, now we call those microorganisms, which is a lot easier to say, by the way. So when you hear about microorganisms, we're talking about those organisms that are just, they're made of one single cell. So how can we study cells? Most cells cannot be seen with the human eye. They're microscopic. So how can we study them? Well, we use a microscope. Hopefully you guys already know how to use a microscope, but if not, I'm sure sometime you guys will do a lab. It's not difficult, it's just, it takes some practice. And this is what a microscope would typically look like. This is basically the one you should be using. I found some interesting labs online. I can post those to my website too if you guys want to take a look at them. It's definitely not as good as using the real thing, but it kind of gives you the concept of what it is to use a microscope. So this is an ocular lens right here. That's just the piece that you look through. And they call the piece between the ocular lens and this part of the microscope the body tube. And then below that you have your revolving nose piece, which just, it spins in a circle, and it has different objectives on it, which the objectives just have magnification numbers. So most of the time I think it's about, you can magnify by 4 times, by 10 times, by 40 times, and by 100, usually on the microscopes that you guys have in the classrooms. This is saying that it can magnify up to 1,000 times, but usually in your science classrooms you don't have microscopes that powerful. This piece is just the arm, nothing really special to it. This is called the stage right here, and the stage holds your slide. So when you use it, you slide your slide, which is just a little glass piece, into the stage clips, and then you can move your stage around so that you can bring that object into view. And you've got your light source down here, which is usually just a light that you turn on. Your diaphragm, which can adjust the amount of light that comes in. If it's too bright, you close it a little. If it's not bright enough, you open it a little. And then you have your adjustment knobs right here. So you have your coarse adjustment knob and your fine adjustment knob. So I'll quickly explain the process of using a microscope. Usually what you do is you prepare your slide, which is you just take that glass piece and you put your liquid or whatever has your cells on it onto that slide, and then you put a piece on top of it to protect that. And you slide that onto your stage, and you adjust your lighting in your stage so that it's how you want it to be. So then you're going to look through your eyepiece down in that slide so you can make adjustments. And so you bring it into view, and then first you use your coarse adjustment knob, which usually moves the stage up and down. And then once you have your object in focus, you use your fine adjustment knob to make it clearer. So coarse first, then fine. Once you have it in view on a lower objective, then you can go to the next highest objective by revolving this nose piece. And usually when you go to a higher objective, you just use your fine adjustment knob because you don't want to bring the stage up and crack your slide. If you guys didn't get any of that, I'm sure that there are lots of videos on YouTube that you can go look up, and they'll show you how to use a microscope so that you're not just staring at a picture and listening to me. So go look that up. Okay, so let's talk about the two categories of cells that there are. You have prokaryotes and you have eukaryotes. So a prokaryote or prokaryotic cell is a cell that does not contain a defined nucleus or cell organelles. An example of a prokaryotic cell would be bacteria. If you look at a picture of bacteria, you can kind of see that it has, its cell wall, cell membrane. When you look in the middle, its DNA is just kind of clumped in the middle, and it has a couple little ribosomes throughout, but it doesn't have anything defined, and it doesn't have cell organelles. I guess I should probably also explain what cell organelles are. The organelles are kind of like what our organs do for us. Each of our organs has a specific function. For example, our lungs breathe, our stomach digests, our brains think. So in a cell, you have these little organelles that have specific functions, and you guys will learn about that very, very soon. Of course, if you want to go look that up, it's probably a good idea to go look it up. Okay, so prokaryote does not have those, and they don't have a defined nucleus, which is that middle portion. Eukaryotes are just the opposite. They're cells that do contain a defined nucleus, and they also contain cell organelles. So our cells are eukaryotic cells. Plant cells are eukaryotic cells. And actually, let's look at a picture of the difference between the two. All right, so this is what a prokaryotic cell might look like, and this is a bacterial cell. This right here is an animal cell, and this is a eukaryotic cell. So if you look, you can see that in the eukaryotic cell, it has different, very definable parts. You've got your nucleus right here. You know exactly where your nucleus is. Endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, Golgi apparatus. You can see all the different parts to it here. So that's a eukaryotic cell. The bacteria here just kind of has a couple ribosomes, which is these little dots scattered throughout, and it just kind of has a clump of that DNA in the middle. There's not a lot of definition to it, it's just kind of in there. Oh, and just as a note on this, going back to this, you don't have to draw this right now. When you guys do color those cells at the end of class, you will have an animal cell, a plant cell, and a bacterial cell. So you'll have something in your notebook that shows you the difference. All right, so between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, even though they're two different types of cells, all of those cells still have common features. Okay, so one thing that all cells have in common is they all have a cell membrane. They all kind of have to have a cell membrane to hold all its stuff inside. And that cell membrane is also there to let things pass in and out of the cell. And that's actually the next thing we'll be talking about. Osmosis, diffusion, all of that. And that's just, again, the job of the cell membrane, letting things pass in and out. But all cells have a cell membrane. So if we go back and look, Notice here this says plasma membrane, so this prokaryotic cell has a membrane. This eukaryotic cell has a membrane, which is this line around here. Another common feature of all cells is that they have cytoplasm, which basically is just the stuff within the cell that everything floats around with. So it's kind of like just a gel that kind of holds everything in place. It's kind of what fills the cell, and all cells have that. Also, all cells contain DNA, and you guys should probably know this, but DNA is basically just the genetic information in the cell. All cells have that. Remember when we looked at the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cell? In the prokaryotic cell, it was just kind of floating there. In the eukaryotic cell, it's located in the nucleus. Another feature of all cells is they all have cytoskeletons, which are just the proteins that support the cell. One way to remember that is your skeleton supports you. You know, without your skeleton, you'd pretty much just be a big old pile of mush. Cells need that too. They need that support, and that's their cytoskeleton. Alright, the final thing that I'm going to have you guys write down for common features of all cells is they all have ribosomes. And remember, they were the little dots in the cytoplasm that I was showing you. In prokaryotes, they're in the cytoplasm. In eukaryotes, they're both in the cytoplasm as well as on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And if you don't know what that is, you guys are going to learn that when you talk about cell organelles. And the function of a ribosome is simply to make proteins. Alright, so that should be the end of your guided notes. I want you guys to make sure that you can do all 4 of these things. And if you can't, you can either write that down and leave me a note or email me. But now you should be able to tell me the 3 parts of the cell theory. You should be able to identify those 5 scientists and what their contributions were to the cell theory. You should be able to look at a cell and explain whether it's a prokaryote or a eukaryote and how you know that. And you should be able to tell me 5 things that all cells have in common. Okay guys, so that's it. Make sure that you do your cell theory worksheet and that you hand that into the teacher. That should be a grade. And after that, you guys are going to color cell organelles in an animal cell, plant cell, and a bacterial cell. So make sure that you do that and you keep it in your notebook. Anything that you don't finish in class, finish at home. Have a good class. Bye guys. Hank. Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye.